All right, boys, it's time. Let's get it. Are you two ready?
No.
Cool.
I
Get it. All right, so I'm taking a little inspiration from The Last Dance. Since now that we haven't had that for a couple weeks, I'm getting a little nostalgic already. So related to 90s basketball, and after seeing all those highlights in The Last Dance, it was so fun to watch. Is basketball more fun to watch in its current state, or was it more fun to watch in the 90s with that Jordan era, the tough ball style that we had then?
Who wants to go first?
I'll defer to the winner. Matt did win last week.
Oh, thank you. You know what? If you weren't going to mention that I won, I was going to mention it. So that's great. Thank you so much. Obviously, I'm for the 90s basketball. I'm not saying that current basketball is bad. Current basketball is fun to watch. I do enjoy it because it's basketball. But something that I never really saw now that when you saw back then was defense. And I know offense is so much fun to watch, but watching these guys actually try their fucking hardest on defense is a trip, man. I was like watching Scottie Pippen go hard on people was fucking great. I loved watching it. Watching the Bulls versus the Knicks, like when the Knicks were complete assholes, like that was awesome. I really loved it. It was a lot of fun to watch. The biggest argument that I have from my point is that back then the 3-point shot wasn't as important or wasn't utilized as much as it is now. When you're watching basketball back then, you can have players like Shaq. You can have players like you can have your big guys, right? You can have your big guys. You can have your Larry Birds and whatnot. Anybody can be a high scorer. Anybody can put up points on anyone. And not only that, because the 3-point line wasn't utilized as much, defense was also much more important, much more utilized, much more fun to watch. Getting big on each other was a wonderful trip. And having Scottie Pippen just step over Ewing was the funniest thing, one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But when you're going into a basketball game and you're looking at a team and you're like, okay, they don't have any 3-point shooters on their team, but that's not going to make them lose. That's what I like. That's personally what I like going into it. You have teams nowadays like the Chicago Bulls who are extremely inconsistent shooters, like Zach LaVine. You know, if you like, I'm not saying this instantly makes them a good team because that team's just trash to begin with. But if you have players who aren't needed to make 3-point shots and can just go up to the rim or can just shoot the mid-range three, like your DeRozans, or even a majority of Kawhi's game is still mid-range shooting. Like that makes more teams A, more fun to watch, and B, gives them more of a chance to actually be good and put in a decent position. And that's what you saw with the 90s basketball. So, huzzah, Jordan era.
Sam, your turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, say it with me. Delusional. Once again, the man, look how he's dressed. The man's living in the 90s at this point, okay?
Dang. Ooh, all right, plus 5 points, Sean.
Thank you, sir.
It's right there.
Okay, but let's be real. The thing about the current basketball, it's all about not worrying about 20 players that played in the 90s, right? It's all about how to play team basketball. That's what basketball is all about. It's how you play team basketball, how you make every single person important. And the way you do this is to improve your shot, right? For example, I'll use my San Antonio Spurs, right? That team is a pure definition of how to play basketball, just purely on ball movement, right? You build these other core skill sets, passing, dribbling, just moving around. That's something that wasn't in 90s basketball. The thing with 90s basketball was give it to your superstar, let him do work, and then hopefully you have your Steve Kerr on your team to maybe make the shot if your superstar can't make it. Here, everyone can be a hero ball. It's hero ball for anyone in this league, right? For example, maybe it's we saw Karis LeVert's game in the 51-point game, right? This guy was nobody at that point. I just think that with current basketball at this point, it's created. I was going to say it creates more jobs, but I'm not a politician at this point. But in the sense of, right, no new taxes, right? But at this point, right, anyone can, I guess not anyone, but anyone who trains and works hard can be in the NBA, right? You also made the argument that, teams that shoot threes like are guaranteed basically winners at this point, or people who, you said that people who don't have threes can still be in a game. The example is the Houston Rockets. We've seen them fall apart completely when James Harden goes 0 for 27. We saw that's a real game too. That's not a made up thing. 0 for 27 from three, and they got destroyed in the end. So like in the end, it's not about just because someone is good at 3-pointers does not mean they're going to make every single one, right? They have a chance, but in the end, it's 50-50. It goes in or it goes out. So I think there's always the thing with the current NBA is that there's always a chance for anything to happen. Anything can happen. Whereas 90s basketball, for example, The Last Dance, right? The ball's going to go into MJ. And as much as I love watching MJ, it's not, team basketball. It's a one-on-one at that point, or a 1-on-5 or 10 at that point.
Excellent argument. Matt, you get 30 seconds for rebuttal. I'll be timing you starting now.
Okay, so essentially, I understand the whole point. I think your Spurs argument actually helps my position more because 90s basketball was a little bit more team. Not more team now, but it wasn't just 1v5 or 1v1. It definitely had team basketball. Then they definitely utilized more skills like passing and dribbling. Now, you're telling me that, yeah, 3-pointers like don't matter as much, but if you take out two of your most important 3-point shooters,
time. Ooh, you're really trying there to get a lot into 30 seconds.
Not say
it.
Sam, back to you for 30 seconds.
Don't worry, I'm going to equally panic to make it fair, but I'm actually just going to panic in general like this. I think going off your argument about how you're saying it's more dribbling and passing back then, I agree. I think there's a lot of things with Jason Kidds or the John Stocktons, right? They had a lot of good control, but you're only naming like 1-2 players on the team, right? They weren't really that good at making their other players good. They were just worrying about themselves at that point. It was always John Stockton, Karl Malone, okay, pick and roll. The big three on the Bulls, the Patrick Ewing on the Knicks, right? It's only these superstars that we're talking about at this point.
All right, fit it all into 30 seconds. I like it. Both good arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, let's vote for which one you think did the better. Current NBA or 90s basketball. Both good arguments on both sides. A lot of things to think about,
I
really
would
deep content here.
Sam has been winning for weeks straight, so let's tear down the.
Wow! What is this? Judge? What are we talking?
Collusion.
Collusion. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. As I cut off Sam.
It's a little rude.
Like Kevin said, you could vote for us on YouTube. You could vote for us on Instagram, Twitter. We'll have that all up. Our wonderful co-host Sam will be putting that up as soon as he can. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at the Deep3Pod. If you have any questions for us, you can please email us at thedeep3pod@gmail.com.
Matt, I'm sorry. I got to really interrupt you. It's actually for an important message, though. I'd like to tell everyone, please go vote. It actually makes a difference.
Yes.
Right? I'm just saying, just from us being young guys, I think we're all 25. If not, you're way too old then. If you're 26, you're too old. But if you're 25, even younger, whatever age you are, please go vote. Honestly, like the system's designed to kind of fuck us up. You don't want to wait these long lines, but it really does count in the end. Kevin and I remember when we voted for the first time, we waited for a while, but we still did it. It was awesome. It was just a great feeling that, hey, we can still contribute to society. So please go vote.
Yeah, you know what? We'll end the show on that note. We really need to get all of this shit that's going on in the U.S. changed. We need to move forward. We need progress. The system kind of fucked the Democrats, I won't lie, but hopefully something positive happens in our direction, not necessarily for Democrats, but just for fucking humanity. let's get this shit changed, man. Let's continue the protests as much as you can. You know, get out there and vote.
Vote for Nixon.